The night the skies burned, she thought the world was ending. The ground shook with the roar of engines louder than thunder, louder than earthquakes. People screamed in the streets as the horizon lit up with fire. Bright trails cut across the heavens, not meteors but ships, vast, terrible, alive with strange blue flames. Humanity had always looked at the stars with wonder, but tonight the stars looked back with cruelty. She ran through the ruined town with only one thought in her heart: survive. Buildings collapsed behind her. The smell of smoke and burning flesh filled the air. Children cried out for parents who would never answer. Soldiers fired their weapons into the sky, their bullets nothing but sparks against the shields of the invaders. The aliens came like shadows made of steel and bone. They were tall, armored, moving with a deadly grace. Their blades hummed with energy, cutting through tanks like paper. One warrior lifted a soldier with a single hand and threw him aside like a doll. No mercy, no hesitation, only war. She stumbled into an alley, clutching her torn jacket close to her body, heart racing so fast it hurt. She thought of her family already gone. She thought of the home that was no longer standing. She thought in her final moments she would die alone. Then he appeared. He was not like the others. He stood taller than any human man. His armor dark but decorated with glowing lines that pulsed faintly, like veins of light. His face was hidden by a mask, but when his eyes found hers, she froze. They were not filled with rage. They were not empty. They were heavy with sorrow, like a storm held back. For a long moment the world seemed silent. The chaos, the screams, the fire, she heard none of it. Only his breathing, deep and steady as he stepped toward her. She pressed herself against the wall, shaking. "Please," she whispered, though she knew he could not understand. He lowered his weapon. Another alien appeared behind him, raising its blade to strike her down. But the first warrior moved with lightning speed, blocking the blow. Sparks flew as the energy blades clashed. The second alien snarled in a language of sharp metallic tones, but the warrior did not answer. He fought not against humans, but against his own kind. She could hardly believe her eyes. This towering stranger was protecting her. When the second alien fell, cut down by his own brother, the warrior turned back to her. He reached out a hand, slowly, carefully, as if touching glass. His voice was low, broken, but she heard one word that pierced through the terror: live. He carried her through the fire. She did not resist. His arms were strong, steady, as if nothing could harm her while she was within them. She smelled strange oils, heard the hum of his armor, felt the rhythm of a heartbeat that was not human but still real, still alive. In the ruins of a burned-out building, he set her down gently. For hours they hid there together, the night filled with death outside but strangely quiet within. He spoke sometimes, words she could not understand, yet the tone was soft, almost tender. His mask was gone now, and she saw his face. His skin was marked with glowing patterns like constellations on flesh. His jaw was sharp, his expression strong, but his eyes were what broke her. They were tired eyes. They were lonely eyes. They were the eyes of someone who had seen too much war and wanted to remember peace. That night she did not know what came over her. Perhaps it was fear. Perhaps loneliness, perhaps the desperate need to feel human again when humanity was dying around her. But when he touched her hand, she did not pull away. When he leaned closer, she let him. In the middle of war, in the heart of destruction, two souls from different worlds found each other. It was not a night of passion, but of survival, of clinging to life and to warmth when death pressed in on every side. A single night borrowed from eternity, where they were not human and alien, not enemy and invader, just man and woman, breathing together. And when the first light of dawn crept into the broken window, she awoke to find him gone. No trace, no word, only the faint memory of his voice echoing inside her heart. Live. When dawn came, the ruins were quiet. Smoke still rose from broken houses, but the skies no longer burned. The alien ships had moved on, leaving behind ashes and silence. She woke in the cold light, and her first thought was of him. The place beside her was empty. No sound of his breathing. No shadow blocking the light. No warmth of those strange, strong arms. Only the mark of where he had sat. The faint impression of his weight on the broken floor. He was gone. Vanished like a dream that fades as soon as the morning sun touches it. For a long time she sat there, confused. She wondered if it had really happened, or if her mind, desperate for comfort, had imagined it. But when she touched her wrist, she felt the gentle bruise where his hand had held her, not in harm but in care. When she closed her eyes, she still heard his low voice, that one broken word. Live. It was not a dream. He had been real. She rose slowly, her body sore, her heart heavy. The world outside was worse than she had feared. The streets were littered with rubble and the remains of homes. Soldiers carried their dead on stretchers. Families cried for those they would never see again. The war had not ended. It had only passed over them like a wave, leaving wreckage behind. No one asked where she had been through the night. No one saw the way her hands trembled when she thought of him. She said nothing. How could she? Who would believe her if she told them that one of the enemy had spared her? That one of the killers had touched her with kindness instead of cruelty? To them, the aliens were monsters. To her, one of them had been something else. Weeks passed and life tried to crawl back into the ruins. Food was scarce. Water was dirty. People rebuilt with what little they had. She worked with them, carrying bricks, sharing rations, trying to pretend she was the same as before. But she was not the same. Inside her, a quiet truth was growing. At first, it was only small signs. She woke in the morning feeling sick. She felt weak, then strangely strong. Her body changed in ways she could not explain. Fear pressed on her chest. She had been with no man, no human man, since before the war. And yet she knew. Deep inside, she knew. She was carrying something. She was carrying his child. Tears came when she first understood. She sat on the broken steps of her ruined home, her hands pressed against her stomach, and she wept. Not only from fear, though fear was there. Not only from shame, though shame was there too. She wept because she did not know what this child would be. Human, alien, something between. What would the people say if they knew? Would they cast her out? Would they cast the child out? Still, when she felt the faint flutter of life inside her, her heart softened. Against all reason, against all fear, she whispered to the unseen child, "I will not leave you. I will not let anyone harm you." Her promise was born of love, though she did not yet know what love meant in this new shape. The seasons changed. Her belly grew. She worked as long as she could, hiding the truth beneath loose clothes. Some women noticed and asked, but she gave no answer. The whispers started anyway. She must have been with someone. How could she? At a time like this? Whose child is it? She lowered her head and bore the words in silence. It was not their story to understand. At night, when she lay awake listening to the wind through the broken windows, she thought of him. The alien warrior with sorrowful eyes. Why had he left without a word? Why had he spared her at all? Did he know what he had given her? Would he ever return? Sometimes she hated him for leaving her with this burden. Sometimes she missed him so much it hurt to breathe. But always, always she remembered his voice, rough and broken, telling her to live. And she clung to that, like a lantern in the dark. By the time the child moved inside her, strong enough for her to feel the kicks, the whispers in town had turned sharper. But she no longer cared. She smiled through her tears, pressing her hand to her stomach. The child was hers. The child was his. The child was life, in a world that had nearly forgotten what life meant, and in that truth she found strength. The boy was born on a cold night, when the stars were hidden behind clouds. The mother held her breath until she heard his first cry. It was strong, almost too strong for such a small body. When the midwife placed him in her arms, she forgot the war, the ruins, the whispers. In that moment, there was only him. He was different from the beginning. His eyes, dark at first, later showed a strange glow in the night, faint but real, like the shimmer of embers in a fire. His skin was smooth but warmer than other children's. His cries carried far, and his little fists gripped her fingers with unusual strength. Yet when he slept on her chest, his breath was soft and gentle, reminding her that he was still just a child. She named him Aaron, a name that meant hope in her people's tongue. Because that was what he was. Hope, born from ruin. As he grew, people noticed the differences. By the time he could walk, his steps were too steady, too fast. By the time he could speak, his words carried strange echoes. He learned quicker than other children, remembering stories after hearing them only once, solving puzzles meant for older kids. But what set him apart most were his eyes. They glowed faintly whenever the night was deep, as though starlight lived inside him. Some neighbors whispered that it was unholy. Others crossed the street when they saw him. A few kind souls pretended nothing was strange, but even they glanced too long when they thought she wasn't looking. To her, he was perfect. She watched him laugh with other children, though their parents pulled them away too soon. She watched him share food when others went hungry, watched him try to heal a bird with broken wings, his little hands trembling as he whispered, "Please don't die." One evening, after a day of helping rebuild the town's well, Aaron looked at her with worried eyes. "Mama," he said softly, "why do they look at me like I'm a monster?" Her heart broke. She pulled him close, stroking his hair, fighting back tears. "You are not a monster. You are my son. But I'm not like them," he whispered. "I hear things sometimes. In the wind. And I'm stronger than the other boys. Yesterday I made the rock move without touching it." Fear gripped her. She wanted to tell him to stay silent, to never reveal that to anyone. But when she looked into his glowing eyes, she saw the same sadness she had once seen in his father, a sadness born of being different. So she kissed his forehead and said, "You are special, Aaron. That is not something to be ashamed of. The world fears what it does not understand, but you must never fear yourself." He nodded, though she knew he did not fully believe her. As the years passed, Aaron grew taller, stronger, faster than any child his age. He could lift heavy beams when men twice his size struggled. He could climb walls with ease. But he also grew gentler, never using his strength to harm. When bullies mocked him, he did not fight back. When orphans cried, he gave them his share of bread. The mother sometimes saw her old friend in him, the boy she had loved before the war, the one Aaron strangely resembled. The curve of his smile, the stubborn kindness in his voice, it was uncanny. At times it frightened her, but mostly it warmed her heart. Still, the whispers grew louder. "Alien blood," people muttered. "Half monster. He will bring ruin one day." She bore their words in silence, but each insult was a knife. Aaron heard them too, and sometimes she found him sitting alone, staring at the stars with wet cheeks. One night, when the moon was full and silver, he asked, "Mama, where's my father?" The question pierced her deeper than any blade. She froze, unsure of what to say. Should she tell him the truth? That his father was not human, that he had come from the stars, that he had vanished at dawn after saving her life? Or should she lie, protect him from the truth that would only make him feel more alone? She chose silence. She pulled him close and whispered, "Your father was someone who wanted you to live." Aaron pressed his face into her shoulder and said nothing more. But she felt his tears soaking her dress. That night when he slept, she stood by the window looking at the stars. Somewhere out there she knew his father was alive. Did he know about Aaron? Did he care? Would he ever return? She pressed her hand against the glass, whispering into the cold night, "He is yours too, come back. Please come back." The stars gave no answer, but deep inside she feared the day they would. By the time Aaron reached his 10th year, the whispers in the town had grown louder than ever. They followed him everywhere like shadows. When he walked through the market, people turned away. When he tried to help carry wood for the elders, they muttered behind his back. When he smiled, mothers pulled their children closer. Alien blood. Half-beast. He will bring trouble one day. The words stung him, but they cut his mother even deeper. Every insult was like a stone thrown at her heart. She wanted to shout at them, to tell them they were wrong, but she held her tongue. She had learned long ago that arguing only fed the fire, so she simply stood taller, holding Aaron's hand, walking past the stairs with quiet strength. At home, Aaron tried to hide his pain, but she saw it. She saw it in the way he stared at the stars instead of eating his food. She saw it in the way his laughter came less often, replaced by silence. One evening, after another day of cruel whispers, he asked her again, "Mama, why do they hate me? I never hurt anyone. I only try to help." Her throat tightened. She cupped his face with both hands and whispered, "Because you are different, and people fear what they do not understand." But Aaron, listen to me. Being different is not wrong. It means you are special. It means you carry something no one else has. He looked into her eyes, his own glowing faintly in the candlelight. "But I don't want to be special. I just want to be like them." Her heart broke. She pulled him into her arms, rocking him as she used to when he was small. "One day, my son, they will see you for who you truly are. One day they will understand." But deep inside, even she was not sure if her words were true. As Aaron grew, his differences became harder to hide. At 12, he was already taller than most men in the town. His strength frightened even those who once tried to be kind. Once, he lifted a heavy beam that had fallen on a worker's leg. Instead of thanking him, the man pulled away in fear, muttering, "Not natural." Aaron heard it. He always heard, yet he never used his strength in anger. When boys mocked him, he stayed silent. When stones were thrown at him, he picked them up and tossed them aside without throwing them back. His mother's heart swelled with pride at his gentleness, but also with fear, because she knew kindness alone could not silence the world's cruelty. Still, there were moments that gave her hope. Aaron often visited the orphans who had lost their families in the war. He shared his food, played with them, told them stories he made up on the spot. They adored him. They didn't see him as different. They saw him as someone who cared. One night he asked her quietly, "Mama, do you think I have a place in this world?" The question nearly crushed her. She looked at him, at his glowing eyes, at his face that carried pieces of two worlds, and she said firmly, "Yes, Aaron, you belong here. You are my son. That alone is enough." He smiled, but it was a small, fragile smile like a candle flame flickering in the wind. The whispers, however, did not stop. They grew darker, sharper. Some said he was a curse. Some said he was a sign the aliens would return. Some said he should not have been allowed to live. At night, when the town was quiet, the mother cried silently where Aaron could not see. She feared for him, not because of what he was, but because of how the world might treat him. Every day was a battle, not against enemies from the stars, but against the fear and hatred of her own people. And yet, no matter how heavy the burden became, she held on. She held on because Aaron was her heart, her hope, her proof that life could grow even from ashes. She held on because every time he smiled at her, every time he said, "I love you, Mama," she felt that maybe, just maybe, love was stronger than fear. But somewhere deep inside, she knew the whispers were not the end. They were only the beginning. A storm was coming, and her son was at the center of it. The years moved slowly, like heavy clouds drifting across the sky. By the time Aaron was 15, he was no longer a boy. He stood taller than most men, his shoulders broad, his voice deep. His eyes glowed brighter now, no longer faint embers, but clear sparks of starlight. The town had learned to live with him, though not in peace. Some still whispered, some still avoided him, but most simply pretended he did not exist. His mother thought that was better than hatred, though she knew it hurt him all the same. Aaron spent many nights outside, sitting on the hill above the village. He would stare at the stars for hours, silent, as if waiting for something. His mother often joined him, bringing bread or a blanket, and together they sat without speaking. She knew what he was thinking, even without words. He was searching for answers in the sky, searching for a father he had never met. Then one night the stars moved. It began with a low hum, so soft it felt more like a vibration in the ground than a sound in the air. The animals grew restless, the dogs barking, the horses pulling at their ropes. The townsfolk rushed into the streets looking upward, and there they saw it, the sky burning once more. Great ships pierced the night, their lights flashing like storms, their shadows blotting out the moon. The same kind of ships from 15 years ago, when the world had nearly been destroyed. Terror swept through the town. Mothers clutched their children. Men grabbed rusty rifles and bows, though they knew it was useless. The war had returned. Aaron stood on the hill, his face pale, but his eyes fixed on the heavens. His mother ran to him, grabbing his arm. "Aaron, come back!" "It isn't safe." But he did not move. His body was still, like a tree rooted to the earth. His lips parted, and in a voice she had never heard before, he whispered words that were not human. Strange flowing sounds, sharp and soft all at once, like music mixed with thunder. Her blood turned cold. "Aaron, what are you saying?" she asked, her voice shaking, but he did not answer. He kept whispering, his eyes glowing brighter, until the words formed into a chant that seemed to echo in the wind. Then the largest of the ships broke away from the others and descended. The ground shook as it landed in the fields beyond the hill. A hiss of steam and fire erupted from its base. The townsfolk screamed and ran for cover. Soldiers raised their weapons, pointing them at the massive shadow. Aaron did not move. His mother clung to his arm, her heart racing. "Please come back with me," she begged. But he only shook his head slowly. "They are calling me," he said. His voice was calm, too calm for such a night. Her heart broke. "No, Aaron, you are mine. You are my son." But before she could say more, the ship's doors opened. A ramp extended down heavy and wide, shaking the ground. From the smoke and light, a figure emerged. He was tall, taller even than Aaron, armored in dark steel that shimmered with glowing lines. His face was scarred, but his eyes, those sorrowful, storm-filled eyes, were the same. It was him, the warrior. Her breath caught in her throat. After all these years, after all the nights she had begged the stars for an answer, here he was, alive. The warrior stepped down the ramp, and his gaze went straight to Aaron. For a long, silent moment, father and son stared at each other. Aaron's glowing eyes widened, his chest rising and falling quickly. The warrior's face trembled, not with anger, not with pride, but with something deeper. Something fragile. Slowly, the boy took a step forward. The mother's grip loosened, her heart torn between fear and love. The warrior knelt. His massive hand, scarred and strong, reached out and touched Aaron's face as gently as if it were made of glass. In broken human words, his voice shaking, he whispered, "My son." The air was heavy, so heavy it felt like the whole town was holding its breath. The alien warrior knelt before Aaron, his large hand still resting gently against the boy's cheek. The townsfolk stood frozen, their weapons raised but unused, their fear twisting into confusion. None of them had ever seen an alien bow before a human, let alone before a child. Aaron's mother could hardly breathe. Her knees felt weak and her heart pounded as if it might burst. She had prayed for answers for years of lonely nights, and now the answer stood before her. The man she had once known only for a single night. The father of her son. The warrior who had told her to live. Aaron stared back at the alien, his glowing eyes wide. You're my father," he whispered, almost afraid to speak the words. The warrior nodded slowly. His voice was rough, broken with the strain of human language. "Yes, my blood. My child, my son." The townsfolk erupted into whispers. Some shouted in anger. "See, he's not human. He was theirs all along. This boy will betray us." The soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons, unsure whether to fire or stand still. The whole town trembled between fear and violence. Aaron looked around, panic flashing in his eyes. He turned to his mother, searching her face. She saw the storm inside him, the desire to belong to both, the fear of being forced to choose. The alien warrior rose slowly to his feet, towering above them all. His army stood behind him, waiting, their weapons lowered but ready. His gaze swept over the terrified humans, then back to the boy and the woman. "He is mine," the warrior said firmly, "but he is yours too." His words were heavy, each one carefully chosen. He is both. He is bridge, not weapon, not curse future. The townsfolk didn't believe him. Murmurs grew louder. One soldier raised his rifle, pointing it at Aaron. The mother cried out, stepping in front of her son. "No," she shouted. "If you harm him, you will have to kill me first." The alien warrior snarled, his voice like thunder. In a blur, he raised his blade, its humming glow filling the night. The soldier froze, terror on his face. The warrior's eyes blazed as he barked in his own language, a sound that shook the ground. His army shifted, weapons humming, ready to strike. The humans raised theirs in return. For one terrifying moment, the hill was on the edge of war, and in the middle of it stood Aaron. He looked at his father, then at his mother, then at the people he had lived among all his life. The same people who had feared him, insulted him, whispered behind his back. He should have hated them, but he didn't. He couldn't. He stepped forward, raising his hands. His voice rang out clear, stronger than it had ever been before. "Stop!" Both sides froze. His eyes glowed like burning stars now, brighter than ever. His voice carried a strange echo, something more than human. The power in his blood was undeniable. "I am not your enemy," Aaron said, looking at the humans. "I grew here. I learned here. I laughed here. I cried here. I am part of you." Then he turned to the alien army. "But I am also yours. My blood carries your strength. My heart carries your voice. I am part of you too." He looked at both sides, his chest rising with determination. "But I will not choose one and destroy the other. I am both, and I will be both. If you fight, you will have to kill me first." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. His words hung in the air, trembling with truth. The boy they had all feared, the boy they had all whispered about, now stood as a shield between two worlds. His mother's tears ran freely down her face. She had always feared this moment, the day he would have to face who he truly was. And now seeing him stand so strong, she felt both pride and pain. The alien warrior's hand trembled on his blade. Slowly, with a sound that echoed like thunder fading, he lowered it. He bowed his head, eyes filled with something rare and deep. Blood and choice, he said quietly. He is both. He is hope. The army behind him followed his lead, lowering their weapons. The humans, seeing this, slowly lowered theirs too. For the first time, silence did not carry fear. It carried possibility. And at the heart of it stood Aaron, the boy who was no longer only a boy. The bridge between two worlds. The hill was quiet after Aaron's words. No sword moved. No gun fired. The humans stared at the boy they had once called a monster. The aliens stood behind their leader, waiting for his command. For the first time since the war began, two enemies stood frozen not in bloodshed but in hesitation. Aaron's mother stepped forward slowly. Her heart was still racing, but her voice came clear. She placed her hand on Aaron's shoulder, standing beside him. Then, with trembling courage, she put her other hand on the alien warrior's arm. Her voice broke the silence. He is not a weapon. He is not a curse. He is proof that even in war love can live. He belongs to no side alone. He belongs to both. The townsfolk shifted uneasily. Some frowned. Others lowered their eyes, ashamed. They remembered the times Aaron had helped them, carried their burdens, shared his bread. They remembered how he had never once lifted his hand in anger, though he had the strength to break them. He had always been gentler than the ones who called him dangerous. The alien warrior looked at her, his eyes dark with storms, but softer now. His scarred hand trembled slightly as he covered hers. His voice, rough and uncertain, spoke slowly in human tongue. He is hope, not war. If he dies, both die. If he lives, maybe both live. The words struck deep. Soldiers lowered their rifles. Farmers dropped their tools. Mothers clutched their children and began to cry. Not from fear this time, but from relief. And then something happened that none had expected. One of the oldest men in the town, bent with age and leaning on a staff, stepped forward. His voice was thin but steady. The boy has lived among us his whole life. He has done no harm. If he is to be our bridge, then we must walk across it. The alien army stirred, confused by his words, but the warrior raised a hand to silence them. His gaze stayed on Aaron as if waiting for him to speak again. Aaron's chest rose and fell as he looked at both sides, his people of blood and his people of home. His voice was steady now, carrying the weight of both worlds. I don't want to see more death. I don't want to live in fear. I want a future where I can be both, where children like me will not be hated. If you want war, then you will have to kill me first. But if you want peace, then start it with me. The words were simple, but they were more powerful than any weapon. The alien warrior dropped to one knee before his son. Slowly, heavily, he bowed his head. His army followed, kneeling as one. The sight stole the breath from every human on that hill. Never before had the invaders lowered themselves to earth. The townsfolk watched, their fear melting into awe. Some cried openly. Others dropped to their knees as well, not in surrender but in understanding. For the first time they saw not a monster but a boy, half theirs, half alien, and yet fully human in heart. Aaron's mother wept quietly, pressing her forehead against his shoulder. You did it, my son, she whispered. You gave them a reason to believe. The boy looked at her, then at his father, and then at the people. His eyes glowed brighter than ever, not frightening now, but beautiful, like stars caught in human form. That night, no blood was shed. No house burned. No child screamed. Instead, there was silence heavy and holy, as if the earth itself was holding its breath in wonder. From that day, the story spread. People spoke of the night a child stood between two armies and made them kneel. They spoke of the boy with starlight in his eyes, the proof that even in war life could grow. They spoke of the mother who carried him alone, and the alien warrior who bowed to his son. And so the world began to change, slowly, painfully, but surely. For humanity had always believed its greatest strength was in weapons, in fire and steel. But on that hill they learned a truth older and stronger. Humanity's greatest power was not war, it was love.